almost 300,000 Hong Kong people come to this country within 3 years. So the growth is so rapid. Just a church that I'm now attending in Kent, their growth, they always say their growth is the most significant one because they grew from 10 people and now 300 people, which is 30 times in just 2 to 3 years. So Chinese community now in Britain is one of the fastest growing group, diaspora. So this booklet has a lot of important figures for Chinese churches to see, wow, what's the landscape? How do they look like? The new Christians who come to this country, what's their faith look like? How do we restructure everything? So, but at the same time, it's not only for the Chinese churches to read this report, but as we are talking about intercultural church, intercultural building, so there's a big group of people coming to this country, and out of this 300,000 people, we believe at least 30,000 of them are Christians. So there's a big team of missionaries coming to these countries. So how do they look like? What's their culture, and how's their faith look like? So these are very important figures that we can look into, and very interesting as well. So today, maybe I can give you the writer to speak something. So let's invite Yinxuan. Yeah, he did a great job for this report. So invite him to speak a lot, some significant figure. Yinxuan.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Ursula. I guess I am the nerdy guy here. You know, I do research, I do lots of numbers, charts. That's exactly what I'm going to feed you in the next 5-6 minutes. But I hope, in the end, you'll find these numbers and figures compelling, because these combined tell a story about not only the Chinese church, but the power and the value of intercultural ministry in this amazing story. So I will start with a relatively unhappy story, maybe, that we're all familiar with in the past 2 years. If you look at 2021 census, the headline will always be, for the first time in history, the proportion of England and Wales residents who identify themselves as Christians is now below 50%. And if you look at more closely to how church grow and how church decline, it echoes much as what Bishop Michael Royer said in the morning. If you look at those who are growing, these are really the Pentecostal, independent, evangelical, and ethnic minority churches. Actually, the first, if you look at the first line, if you can see the screen, the fastest growing church before the Chinese migration in around 2021 to 2022 is the Romanian Orthodox, followed by Hillsong, Vineyards, and independent evangelical church fellowship. Now, while historic churches are declining, we can see a very interesting trend among those traditional minority churches. The thing is, where does the Chinese go in this picture? Now, background story is that the UK government opened this British National Overseas Visa Scheme to Hong Kong migrants who migrated from Hong Kong to UK because of political unrest in East Asia. So there's a huge window for evangelism in the past 2 years. So if you really fit the Chinese into this picture, you will see something like this. So the first two lines, the very first line is the overall growth of the Chinese church, which is nearly 30%. And if you look at the Hong Kong Cantonese-speaking church, it has grown by almost 80% in the past 2 years. And if you fit that into the broad picture in the UK, that's an amazing result. However, let's not forget, this is not just a spiritual issue, it's also a very socio-political thing. Because of that window, BNO window, opened this opportunity for us, and this momentum for us to catch, to take advantage of, to really introduce more people, tell more people about Jesus. And this window will eventually close. If we don't catch the momentum, it will lose eventually. And like someone say, it's not stable because the Archbishop of all immigrant churches, including the Chinese, is actually the Home Secretary. And he's going to decide who come in, he or she going to decide who come in, who goes out. And sometimes they are good, they open a window, sometimes, they can be grumpy and unpredictable. So let's just catch the momentum and do good things, shall we? Now, so what does this mean to It's not moving. Yeah, so what does it mean to intercultural ministry? So if like I arrived in the UK in 2010, when I came here, it's a default that I'm a Chinese. I was born and brought up in mainland China. I should always go to a Chinese church. But now the things are changing gradually, especially in the last 2 years. So if you look at the new Hong Kong migrants, at least 1 in 3 of them would prefer to go to a non-Chinese local, English-speaking local church if you ask them. And also in our survey, we found that over 50% of second-generation Chinese immigrants, they would prefer actually to go to a local English church rather than the Chinese church. So the landscape is changing rapidly, and the case of Chinese is saying that spirituality, Christian faith, is not just within your little ethnic cocoon. And what I think is more amazing, if you can turn to the next slide, is that we ask non-Christian Chinese who are attending churches, and what brought you to the church? So the thing is, what we found the key was really interpersonal relationship and personal invitation. So if we got all of our 1,000-ish non-Christian Chinese respondents, are you in the church? Are you attending the church in the last 4 weeks? So for those of them who were invited by a non-Chinese English-speaking friends, the proportion is around 17%. If you're personally invited by a Chinese friend, it's about 14%. But if no one invited them personally, the likelihood that they go to a church in the past 4 weeks only 0.9%. So it's a 20 times difference. Now, what does 17% mean, interestingly? If you compare with a very recent survey conducted by University of Manchester, actually, if invited personally, a non-Christian Chinese likelihood to attend the church is greater than go into a Manchester United football match, all right? And of course, in a survey, if you replace Manchester United with City, there might slightly be different results, because obviously City are the only team that can represent Manchester. However, it does say that personal invitation, especially in this case, if you invite someone who's not from your ethnic background, that can even be more efficient when it comes to ministry. And we ask those Chinese Christians and seekers alike in a non-Chinese church, what makes you stay here? And we make this word cloud. So basically, if you see the word is very big, that means this is something very key to them. So the number one keyword we found is trust. So in order for them to stay, it's all about trust. It's not about like a temporary experience or moment. It's really about trust that's embedded in relationships, not just horizontal relationships. The beauty of intercultural ministry, as we found, is that it bears the witness of this transcending power of the Christian faith. By worshiping and engaging with people who are not like me, it shows that the power of our faith actually go beyond those bright boundaries of ethnicity, race, culture, whatever you like. And it tells you the power of this vertical relationship to eventually encourage the seekers to find that all the answers actually we can find is in Jesus. And another thing I would like to raise is youth. Many people are talking about youth, because if you look at the immigrant church, interestingly, first-generation immigrants, it's really about it's about an ethnic church. But if you talk to the second generation, like the British-born Chinese in the church, they are not necessarily considering themselves as Chinese. Many of them feel more British than Chinese. So it's really an intercultural ministry by nature. So intercultural ministry in an immigrant church even, it's not an alternative, it's a must. And finally, I think this is really interesting. The third one is called re-evangelize. So if you really talk to many Chinese pastors, Christian leaders, they will tell you Chinese Christianity in East Asia has such a British root. But they were sad to see that this declining number, this narrative of secularization. So they want this relation to be bilateral. So it's not like traditionally, we're Chinese, we're considered atheist, so we need help from the the white counterpart. It's really about how can this influx of Hong Kong migrants, this huge surge in the Chinese church, can bless the broader Christian family and even the wider British society. So there are huge opportunities here, and it's so important that we're sitting here discussing about the possibilities, discussing about the opportunities that we can yoke together to really not only to serve the Chinese per se, but also how we can together use this opportunity to really make this a blessing to the wider community. Thank you.
It is my honor to be here to share with all of you. I have the confidence to speak in Cantonese, but not the competence to speak in English. I moved to Bristol, and so you can see the first picture. If you go to Bristol, St. Mary at Wycliffe, you can find the stained glass over there. They're quite wonderful. And they talk about the migration history inside the Bible. And so I don't talk too much about that. I moved to Bristol with my wife in 2021 because of the political situation in Hong Kong. And as you can see in this picture, I have 2 sons, 1 daughter-in-law, 2 granddaughters, and also 1 puppy, not shown inside this photo. And this year marked my 40 years of full-time pastoral ministry in church. I guess nobody will deny that we are living in chaotic times. And so the first thing, we have to know the context. And so some call the world we are living in as VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous. This becomes the new normal. The church is no longer serving in politically and religiously friendly context. That is where we are. And at least we can from the census in 2021, the number of British Christians and church attendance were in decline. The overall British population becomes diverse, so was the Christian congregation. This table doesn't reflect the large amount of Hong Kongers migrate to UK after 2021. I think most Hong Kong new immigrants, here you have to listen, don't identify themselves as Chinese. Rather, they identify as Hong Kongers. And so the first thing, you have to be politically and culturally sensitive. And so if you want to launch a new ministry, you have to choose to Hong Kongers or to mainland Chinese. Don't mix together. You will create a lot of troubles and conflicts. But for those existing, it's okay. And so you have to bear in mind the first thing. Don't make them now, you have to have racial or cultural reconciliation. Now is not the moment. Just like you are requesting the Ukrainians and the Russians, we have to be friends again. It takes time to heal the wounds made in the history. And so I would say the table, so here, I go to the next one. You can see the British church is aging and declining, but the immigrants of the Chinese from other nations bring in vitality and growth of the church at large. Most Hong Kong immigrants are young families with children in primary education, just like my son and my granddaughters. One interesting thing I found is that, here I can skip. In Hong Kong, in 2020, they sent out 34 professional missionaries working here in UK. But in the meantime, by God's hand, God sent out 30,000 Christians at least, coming, settling here. And so reverse mission is happening now here in UK. And so you can see that by God's hand, this surprising move bring me, other pastors, other church leaders, and faithful disciples to strengthen the Chinese church as well as the local churches. Okay, I come to the second principle. First, we know the context. And the second thing, we have to build relationship. I think a lot of here already listen a lot of talks about relationship. It takes time to build relationship and partnership. I like this definition by one mission agency. A relationship between 2 or more interdependent churches or organizations that plan, leverage resources, and intentionally work together to achieve the shared vision God has given them to advance His kingdom in ways they could not accomplish alone. And this is why we are together here today. The first year, when I arrived, I just attended a nearby Baptist church in Bristol. By God's grace, I met a retired couple in the church. It happened they just live opposite to my apartment. Then they become our local friends and guide us to adjust and integrate into the community. I was introduced to know and visit pastors of other Baptist church. Many new immigrants, they study and learn English at school, but we don't have much opportunity to speak at work. I took the initiative to organize English conversation class in 2 local churches. And so the first thing you can think in your church for outreach to all the migrants, no matter from Hong Kong, from mainland China, from Ukraine or other countries, English conversation class. That's the easy way. The English conversation class not for educational, but for cultural. You just lead your church members mix together and help them to integrate into the English society. And so you can see here the pictures and then the English conversation class. I visited the pastor, and the pastor is willing to open the church, and so we have cooperation and partnership to have this kind of English conversation class. And now I would say that as my teacher, Ray Bucky, he passed away last year, he mentioned, we focus more on advancing the kingdom of God and less on advancing the kingdom of our local community or ministry. That is what we try to accomplish. Each local church cannot accomplish God's mission. Only we work together and we can accomplish God's mission here. Okay, and now we come to the third point, is learning by doing. Nobody here is expert or authority. We are all learners. And so the first thing is learning by doing. I have 36 years, I'm quite experienced, but I'm new in UK. And so it takes me about 3 years to try new things and to try new models for the Hong Kongers to mix together with the local people here in UK. Like here, you have to know, the Chinese here inside the room, some from mainland China, some from Hong Kong, some from Malaysia, some from other parts. All the Chinese, they are same ways, but they are different cultures. And so you have to be aware. In China, they use simplified Chinese. In Taiwan and Hong Kong, we use traditional Chinese. In writing, it's the same, but in speaking, it's quite different. Taiwan, China, they speak Mandarin. Hong Kong, they speak Cantonese. And so that is, if you say, a lot of Hong Kongers here, and we sing the song in Mandarin, you are sure you create trouble. Of course, we can sing in Mandarin, but preferable, you have to help them to, just like we sing together before, one verse in Cantonese, one verse in Mandarin, and so you can cater for both groups. I would say that there are 3 strings of Chinese community here in UK. The first is the traditional Chinese church, and most of them, you can see that this kind of Chinese church, they are quite traditional, and so most of them are associated with COCM, and they speak in 3 languages, Mandarin, Cantonese, and English. But you have to know, all the pastors and church leaders, they don't dare to speak anything publicly against the government. That is the traditional Chinese church. And another thing, you can see the yellow one. Yellow is quite politically. And so you can see the yellow one, I call it Hong Kong Christian communities, because some are not church. They are fellowship, they are study group, they are home groups. Most of them, they established after 2021. And some of, usually they have 2 languages, Cantonese and English, no Mandarin. And so you can know the difference. And some of the leaders, they dare to speak something against China. And that is the difference between the Chinese church and Hong Kong church. Why the Hong Kong people coming to UK? Because of the political oppression by Chinese government. And so you have to be sensitive to this kind of issue. For myself, I'm okay to serve Mandarin and Cantonese. For different groups, I'm a servant of God, no matter the political difference. But for some, they still have inside the hurts and pains created in the past. Now, and the third one, that is what I'm trying to do, to encourage a lot of Hong Kong Christians to go to local churches. I have about 10 families before I pastor, they settled in Bristol. All of them, they attend local churches, not Chinese churches. Why? Because I don't see any future of Hong Kong or Chinese church. All migration church only serve the first generation. They last only 30 years or at most 50 years. After that, how about the second generation? And so you have to think long term. And so I would prefer to see my granddaughter in the future to become the church leader inside a local church, not in a Chinese church. That is my dream. I will see a lot of Hong Kong people, they become to be public figures, to have leadership influence in different professional fields. That is my dream. And that is what we hope for. There are only usually three ways. The first is landlord and tenant relationship. And you know, the English church just, okay, I have the hall morning time for our service, but in the afternoon, we just let to the Chinese, Hong Kong, Filipinos, or other different congregation. Only commercial relationship, no partnership at all. That is not we are here to talking about. The second relationship, some local church, they would, I just plant another congregation. I just plant another service. That is different. That is a Japanese, Korean, Philippines, or Chinese, or Hong Kong. And also, they have different service, but they don't mix together. And the third one now I'm working is hybrid. How the hybrid work? I began in 2022, April, in a local community church. And so here is the format. Inside the service, we start at 10:30. All people, all age, coming together to the main hall. Then we sing all the songs in English. Yes, almost finished. And then, announcement also in English. And then, they would pray for the children, and the children would go to the children activities. And the young would go to the young activities. And the Hong Kongers, they would go to another room for Cantonese sermon. And then afterward, all together. And we just use this service only twice a month, not every Sunday. Why? If every Sunday it become another Hong Kong or Chinese church, we don't want to be independent Hong Kong or Chinese church. We just want, to be intercultural. That is what we intentionally trying to do. And so you can see here the picture, the hybrid service. Because of time limit, and so the last one is that when you think for Paris, just like John Wesley, the city is my Paris, that is in Bristol. And I also have men's running cup together. And also that kind of wood activities. The men just running together and they're drinking coffee. Each Friday, we have that kind of activities. And so the last point is, why not another Chinese church? As I mentioned before, I would prefer to see many Hong Kongers diverse in different churches. And so it brings benefits and blessing to all of us, not only to a certain cycle. And so I would say that at least 20% of UK church need to be intercultural, not multi-ethnic. And so I don't say much here. And okay, because of time, I have to stop here. And so the last one is, it brings blessing to the city and its city transformation. Thanks of all.